we have a number of guest speakers that have joined us today, including Martin Pinnell, who is the Senior Officer for Bexley Council, who will introduce himself fairly shortly. We've also got Sarah King, who is the London Development Manager for the Federation of Small Businesses. We've got a video from Fiona Cummings, who is the Community Affairs Manager of Corrie Environmental, who field a lot of community grants programs. And we may be joined by Councillor David Gardner, who's a Senior Councillor in the London Borough of Greenwich, and who has significant experience of public sector procurement. So we are going to start now. I'm going to share the screen shortly to do a short presentation on funding. Okay, here we go. And for those who just joined us, this is part of the Talking Business programme, which is a Bexley Council supported programme of free business support. If anybody is not is a Bexley business but not a member of this, they can you can join. Just contact us later or put your details in the chat. So there's all our details. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to link in with me. My name is Gary Parker. And there is some information about our YouTube channel there, which has got a lot of presentations, several related to this particular program. This is something about me. I've been the Managing Director of C&T Associates since 2011. In the fundraising work we do, we've raised over £30 million for our clients, and there is my contact information if anybody wants it. It will be at the end as well. I'm going to start with a few top tips for funding sites, because this is a very short presentation. The first one here that I would recommend is the Government Finance Hub. If you go onto that link, that's on the government's website, gov.uk, and you can do a customised search for business support and finance. So it's a very comprehensive site. Another good one, if you're looking for funding information, is Funding Central. That does have a paywall on it for larger organisations, but smaller ones and sub-raisers, you may be able to get a free membership, but you have to check with them. The next one is the Entrepreneur's Handbook, which I would recommend anyway, because it's got very comprehensive information about how to develop any kind of business. But it's also got a section on grants, which is about 60 pages. It's UK wide and is very comprehensive. Another one that is always a good source of information is Sage Advice, which is managed by the organisation Sage, who make business software, business accounting software. So it's very much in their interest to support small businesses. And they've got a list of grants for small businesses there. The Government Grants Hub is a smaller site, but it does cover all sectors and is well worth a quick look. And finally, in terms of websites, Grants Online, that is a very good and comprehensive site. Again, there is free access to that, but there is a paywall on it as well. And finally, there's information on your local authority website about business support in Bexley. It's Bexley Business and Employment. They've got a sub-site on their on the Bexley Council website, which is well worth checking out. But many other local authorities, if you're from elsewhere, have that as well. So you just go onto the website and do a search for business support. So there's a quick review of some funding sites. Here's the government's national funding support line. You can message them, you can phone them, and you may get referred locally or regionally. If it's in London, it's likely to be Growth for London, or possibly down to local providers as well. But that's well worth checking out, and there's the website address as well. Here's a few new funding links. First one from Startups UK is how to apply for a grant, which is always useful. The next link there is from the British Business Bank, which was set up by the government during the pandemic and supported bounce back loans and various other programs to help small businesses, many of which were able to stay afloat, fortunately. And another one there, which is I would recommend, is Simply Business, the grants access articles, and well worth a look. That's a good site. Finally, energy-related grants and schemes. These are not what they were, but if you're a business that has to rely on energy resources, then that's worth checking out. But that has changed from what it was a year or 2 years ago. But nevertheless, may well be worthwhile checking for some of you at least. Let's move on. This is another source of funding, crowdfunding. I'm not going to explain too much about this because we've got a number of other speakers, but crowdfunding is either where people can invest if you're a private business, rather like Dragon's Den type funding, or if you're a non-profit making business, you can get what are effectively donations through crowdfunding. A good place to start if you're interested in crowdfunding is crowdfunder.co.uk, because that caters both for profit-making and non-profit making businesses, and it explains the process, and they give you a lot of help and advice. So I would recommend that, but there are others that are mentioned on this slide, like Cedars, which is the biggest in the world, and you have the British equivalent of it, Crowdcube, both of which have raised a lot of money for private businesses, and I've had good feedback, particularly about Cedars and how they support businesses. So if you're interested in crowdfunding, that's raising investment funding through contributions of various types, then you can check that out. This is a bit more about what crowdfunders do. If you're a profit-making business, they will charge you 5% of what you raise, plus some transaction fees. If you're a non-profit making business, the process is actually free, but there's a number of other benefits that they add on as well. I'm going to skip that. I'll move to questions, I think. I'm going to stop the share now. So has anybody got any initial questions? If you haven't, we can take some questions later after the other speakers have spoken. I'm just going to have a look. I can't see anything in the chat at the moment. Okay, then we're going to move on now. The next speaker will be Martin Pinnell from Bexley Council. Thank you for joining us this morning, Martin. It's I know how busy you are, so it's much appreciated. And over to you.
Thank you very much, Gary, and Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Pinnell. I'm Programme Manager at the London Borough of Bexley in the Economic Development and Skills team. It's the Economic Development and Skills team provide number of services around supporting local businesses, supporting our town centres and town centre organisations, and also helping our local residents get into work by helping them with skills and introducing them to local employers. So, to sort of get back into work. So there's a sort of quite a wide range of things that we do, but it's a discretionary function within the council. So it's a very small core team, and it's also very small council budget. So actually, what we do a lot, but it's mostly reliant on external funding. So from my point of view, I've got experience of both ends of this process, both as an applicant to government grant schemes or government funding schemes, but also as a grant provider. So which I understand this is why really Gary invited me onto this call, because during the COVID period, the period of the pandemic, my team, very small team, was responsible for delivery of over £10 million worth of support delivered to businesses in the Bexley area, Bexley Borough. And the vast majority of that was delivered as direct grants to individual businesses, and many of that, much of that, was really, in effect, hardship grants. These were kind of no strings attached, in the sense that it was just really to keep the businesses afloat. But applicants did need to prove that they were bona fide businesses and they had suffered losses due to the pandemic, and importantly, couldn't get money from other sources. So, that it was a very very busy time for my team, and processing hundreds, probably over 1,000 plus applications for those grants. And there was some more targeted grants that we introduced towards the end of the pandemic period, which was really about business improvement and innovation. This was called the Bexley Innovation and Growth Grant. And then we required people to provide a lot more information, a lot more detail. Basically, what they were doing is putting in a proposal to say, this is how we want to improve our business. This is how it could grow, and this is how the money could be used to do that. And we provided grants to around, I think it was around 20 businesses, up to 24k was the maximum award. Some was quite a bit less than that, but so that was quite an interesting experience, getting on the inside of those businesses, understanding what they needed, and working with them to come up with a sort of plan of action to improve the business and fund that. So and we've had some really good success stories out of that grant. Unfortunately, that finished. That bit of money finished, obviously, at the end of the pandemic. We do have a current grant scheme, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. But I thought might be helpful to kind of give some more generic advice from my own experience of being on the receiving end of people applying for grants. What makes it easier for us to because if we have money to give away, we do want to actually give it out. So it's to our benefit if people put in good applications, and we can then give them the money. So the three things I thought I'd come. I mean, some of you, it may well be sort of old hat, but the three, I guess, bits of advice I'd give to anyone applying for government grants or grants from sort of public sector organisations are, first of all, read and then reread the guidance carefully before applying. So mostly this is given online, but it's really important to read it carefully and check that you've got a project that will fit with what the funder actually wants to support. Read the small print. What are the exclusions? You know, could your organisation be excluded for some reason? In which cases there's no point in going through the process of trying to apply. But yeah, so that's the first thing: read and then reread the guidance, and maybe even read it again before you apply. Now, the second bit of advice is, if in doubt, contact the funder directly. The thing to know is there is a human being behind that form. I know most application forms are online these days, and they seem a bit faceless, but there is a human being behind the form that wants to you know, make that money available. But mistakes can be made, and sometimes there is unclear wording on the guidance or even on the form. So if something's not clear, then it's best to ask, and ask directly if you can. Obviously, it depends on the organisation as to how easy that is, but obviously allow sufficient time for those clarifications before you do well before the application deadline. The third bit of advice really is around, you know, the funder won't know what you don't specifically tell them on the form. So even if your business is familiar to the funder and you've had grants from them before, don't assume they will know anything. It's a bit like a job application process. The scorer can really only go on what is in black and white in front of them, and whatever evidence you provide in support. So no sort of prior knowledge or assumptions really can be brought into the process, and sometimes people forget that, and maybe, you know, because time is pressing, particularly with a deadline. Sometimes there's a kind of shorthand that people put into, and they assume that the funder knows all about their organisation and what projects they've run, but you know, it really needs to be set out in black and white in the application. So those are my 3 top tips. Finally, help is not always in the form of cash, but it's still valuable. So don't underestimate the value of in-kind support. So you know, for example, it could be about helping you know, this sort of support, and the sort of support that's available through Gary and other people that we're working with on the Talking Business program. Are, you know, it can provide all sorts of things like sort of, you know, helping to rebuild a website and helping to promote that website better, getting on social media, maybe helping through the paperwork involved in taking on a new employee. So all of these things would cost the business owner time, which is money, or actual money to pay an expert advisor to help. So you know, if you can take advantage of those in-kind support schemes, it can save the business money as well. So do take a look at our Talking Business program. Talk to Gary about, if you're not already signed up to the scheme, talk to Gary about how he can help you through that Talking Business program. It does include one small grant scheme to help businesses train their staff. I can tell you a little bit more about that if you want to find out. But most of what we're doing through Talking Business is advice, guidance, and training. And I'll put further links about the Talking Business program and how to apply for that in the chat. And also, I'm happily if you think of a question after this event, then I'll put my email in there, and I'd very happily take a query from you. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Gary, I can't hear you. I don't know whether that's me or you're on mute.
Sorry, no, that was me. Thank you for your presentation, Martin. We can take questions from people now if anybody is interested. Can't see any at the moment. Martin, I've got a couple of questions. Does the council have any new grant programs that people can ask, or any grants at the moment that people can access?
The only one that's currently available, thank you for your question, Gary. The only one that's currently available is our Talking Business training grant, and this is basically to help local businesses, so Bexley-based businesses, train either themselves, it could be the manager, it could be the owner of the business, or their staff, to help upskill, or it could be to get accreditation for something that's required for somebody to do their job. We are offering up to £500 per business to support the costs of that training. So, and it's a match funded thing. So you could in effect get £1,000 of training for a business, and it's it would cost you 500. So it's a good deal, and will help to reduce the cost of doing that. And that's available now, so people can apply for it right now. In fact, I can put the link to the application form in the chat if that's helpful.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, we've had a question from Menahar saying, is the programme only available to Bexley residents? Yes, that is the case. I can answer that quite quickly.
Yes,
but
well, Bexley businesses, yes, that's it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But if your business is based in another borough, then you should check your local authority website, because there are similar programs to this running in other places. David Gardner, who's a councillor in Greenwich, may be able to shed some light on that. I don't know, but they're definitely running in other places as well. The second question is there anything in the pipeline in terms of business support funding for local businesses?
Well, we currently have our UK SPF funding, which is funding the Talking Business programme, which has various strands to it, including the grant scheme, training grant scheme. That runs until March 2025. At the moment, unfortunately, there's no we haven't been informed of any subsequent funding programme that's going to sort of continue any of that work, which is a shame. The difficulty, I think, is that we are in a bit of a period of sort of political uncertainty, with lots of elections happening, both the mayoral and GLA elections, and obviously potential national elections. So this does mean that sort of priorities, I guess, for funding will be potentially under review over the coming 12 months. As political as governments change in different ways. So what we'll keep a lookout for this. This is something that we are obviously in conversation with people like the GLA, who are a big player in terms of funding for London sort of programs, and we're sort of keeping quite close to them in terms of what's going on. So maybe a subsequent funding panel will have a bit more to say on that. But as I say, watch this space. And unfortunately, at the moment, it's a little bit of a cliff edge in March 25.
Thanks, Martin. We may come back. Well, we will come back later in the year to see where we are on that. So I'll invite you back, and perhaps you'll be able to update us in a month or two's time once we've had some of these elections. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now. The next item, Sybil, if you can cue this up, we're going to show a short video put together by Fiona Cummings from Corey Environmental, who's a community manager, about bid writing.
Good morning. Welcome to Funding Tips presentation. I'm Fiona Cummings and I'm the community manager for Corey. So I put this short presentation together because I couldn't make the presentation. So what I've done is put some hints and tips together, just based on my own experience. First off, if you're applying for funding, what you kind of need to do is really look at the advert. You need to do some rough research, find out about the organisation that you're applying funding for, read it, gather the information, and you also need to consider the filling in process, because sometimes people don't anticipate how long it will take. We have so many applications coming in last minute, and I'm a little bit flexible on the deadline, but not everyone would be. And also take some time out to improve your application process and get feedback for next time. So let's continue. So the first part I'd just like to look at is when you're doing your rough research, does it look promising? Is it offering the right amount of funding that you need for your project? What exactly is the company looking for who's offering the funding? Are you aligning it with what you're doing? Because quite often we'll have applications which are nothing to do with what our values are. So you really do need to look at it or trying to align it in your application. Okay, internal or external. So again, I think you need to look at your organisation just to see if everything aligns. We also say fill it out in a Word document, because then you can always go back to it. If you haven't got a Word doc, you can always ask for it, because what happens is people fill it out online, come halfway through and realise that they haven't got everything, and that they have to get more data, and then they have to start all over again. Some companies can't offer feedback, but I would say definitely ask for it. And also keep a log of the applications that you're making, because sometimes people forget what they've applied for. And then when someone makes contact with them, it's a bit of a shock, a bit like when you go for an interview, keep a log for all the jobs that you're going for. This is one that's recommended by a lot of people. This process is have a set of pens with you when you actually go through the advert and the guidelines. And colour anything in red, which the advert is saying you must have, because if you don't have that, that means actually you're not meeting the criteria. And you'll probably spend ages completing the form, and actually you'll get turned down straight away. Highlight in orange the things that you should have, but aren't a deal breaker. And also in green, information that you need to find out more. So it kind of then stands out on the definitely needs, should have, but maybe there's some flexibility there, or you just need to be clever on your application, and things that you don't know but need to do more research. Okay, this is a biggie, and this is where people don't allocate enough time to do this. And I know time is very tight, especially if you're working in a charity or community interest group, but diarise some time, even if it's in the evening. So basically, maybe even set up a meeting with the organisation just to find out a little bit more about what's on offer. Follow it up so people know that your name stands out in their head. Fill in the form. And just make sure it's before the deadline. As I say, you need to be a bit organised in this. Okay, sometimes people don't put enough information, or sometimes it's like War and Peace. And a lot of senior managers don't have a lot of time to read War and Peace. So they just want the key bullet points. So useful to know short-term, medium and long-term what the goals are in the project, and they actually get someone else to read through it, because what makes sense to you doesn't make sense to other people. Now, the important thing for the community funds is basically demonstrating how the community can get involved with the project. And the more people that you can reach, the better it is for the organisation. So to what impact will a project positively impact the intended beneficiaries? And maybe not just short term, but long term. You know, how much information is then going to be given to other people to then go out into the community and pass on that information? Okay, another aspect to consider is, are you going to apply for the maximum amount of funding, or are you going to apply for a small amount of the funding? how many applications are you going to make? Because some organisations will accept a number of applications for different projects. We do like a bundle, like a project when you go for an application. Never go above the amount, because again, it seems to the organisation that you're applying to, it's a little bit cheeky. So have in your mind, and my suspicion was to be to sort of set it lower than the maximum amount, because submitting for smaller projects means also that the organisation can cover more applications, as they'll have a set budget for the community fund. So let's think about when you're applying now, you need to look at the deadline. So the process usually takes a little while, and this is what people forget, especially larger organisations. They rely on a third party called the accounts team. So what you kind of need to do is submit well before the deadline, diarise it maybe to get it in a couple of weeks before. Quite often if something's missing, I might also contact the organisation and say, look, you're missing this off there. Shortlisting is just a check usually to make sure that the applications meet the criteria. Align it with the guidelines for the funding. Now for Corey, we like shorter projects, usually 0 to 9 months. And it doesn't mean that long-term projects don't get funding, but take a project within that long term to request for funding. And also just bear in mind when you need that money. As I said, the accounts team sometimes takes a while to do the due diligence. They might only make payment a couple of times a month. And usually at end of year, it is a bit of a busy time. So funding may not get progressed until sort of February, end of February 2024 for us. So if they applied in December, they would get the money about February 24. And this is probably representative of a lot of organisations. So you can't get the money straight away. Photos, pictures will always make your case stronger. And it'll help the panel to understand the current situation. So we have a panel, and I'm sure a lot of other organisations have, where you have a number of people from different departments sitting in and looking at the projects, and they'll do a scorer, and it'll be the top projects with the highest score that will benefit from the funding. We also ask that the evaluation piece is done at the end of the project, because it's nice to have good news stories. It would be great for you guys. We don't say, because you've had funding once, you can't apply again. And I bet quite a lot of organisations are like that. And I think if you're able to give a good news story, if you do apply again, we kind of know that the money is in safe hands. What is important, and we've learned by this, you need to have bank account details. So if you're applying for funding, you need to have bank account details, and the organisation needs to be running for over a year. It'll be the same for most organisations, because they've got to demonstrate that the community interest group or charity is established. Okay, this is just a quick slide giving you an example of if you were kind of submitting a bid for money. Quite often it's the accounts team that will be involved in the community panel, and we like to have a little bit of definites around costs, and it's usually applications that have put more definites in. It looks like they've really kind of investigated how much things will cost, that are usually successful. This is just an example. All organisations are different, so break it down when you're submitting a cost. Even sending quotes, you know, as sort of appendices, so it looks like you're not making those figures up. And we always say, get someone else to read through it, making sure that you've got all the reds in there, you've covered the majority of the should haves, and there's no missing information. Spell check is very important. I'm not too fussy about it, but some people are, and you don't know who's going to be sitting on that panel. Make sure you have your attachments. And sometimes it just is yourself in the organisation or the charity. So it is hard. Maybe get a member of the family just to read through it to double check. And the final thing is, if you're successful or not successful, keep a portfolio of applications so you know what you've applied for and also where you might have gone wrong if you've got feedback. It's just useful. So if you were reapplying for the following year, you don't start from scratch. You've already got some information there that you could put on the start of your application. Thank you for listening. I hope that you've got something from this presentation. Good luck with your funding applications.
Okay, thanks, Sybil. If you can stop the share now, thank you. So that is a brief presentation in 10 minutes, which is a very good précis of what are the main aspects of a funding application. That has covered quite a lot. So if you haven't got questions now, we can take them later. And as I said, this video will be available on our YouTube channel in about 10 days' time. So watch out for that. The links were at the beginning for that, or just go onto YouTube and search for CNT Associates. Okay, I'm going to move on now because we've still got 2 more people. So the next person is Sarah King from the Federation of Small Businesses, who's the London Development Manager, who's very kindly joined us at short notice today. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Gary, and good morning to everybody here today. I'm actually stepping in for my colleague, who some of you may already know, in the Bexley area, and that is Rachel Barham, who is an FSB membership advisor and support on the ground locally if you need to reach out to her after today. But my sort of introduction to FSB today in terms of the support funding wise for small business owners, I'm going to just take the opportunity to share with you the FSB website, which is an absolute goldmine of information for small business owners. So I'm going to do a quick share now. Firstly, take you to the home screen. So if you haven't seen the FSB website before, as I mentioned, it is a goldmine of information. Gary has been one of our brilliant FSB members for many years now. We're very grateful to have Gary on board with FSB too. So the FSB is actually 50 years old this year, and the website is very comprehensive, and it's really worth having a chance to go through it in your own time, but to really sort of navigate it. And of course, come back to us at FSB or to Gary if you've got any questions. So this is the homepage, and I'm just going to really signpost you to the pillar that's under membership. And the reason for this is because it highlights what FSB is about. FSB has been lobbying for small business owners for 50 years this year. And everything to do with small business owners, we are your voice. We're a very powerful voice in government at a national, regional and local level. So just to move on very quickly, I wanted to just highlight, because I know we spoke about earlier about the support across the London boroughs in terms of business support for small business owners, and particularly Bexley. You also got a chance under the support near you to find the London regional team. So please, of course, reach out to us as another avenue of support for you as a small business owner in the Bexley area. And in terms of benefits, and this is what I'm going to focus on today because it's about funding. So there's a very large range of benefits that members can enjoy. So before I move to that section, the FSB website is open for anybody to be able to navigate around. You don't have to be a member, but obviously there's parts of the website that are only available to members, and benefits being one of them. And one of the benefits, I'm going to click on that link just there. You can scroll down. I won't hesitate too long on any particular area, but I just want to highlight one particular benefit that is very useful for you today if you're looking for funding. And that is called the funding platform. So members can actually click on this benefit, and they can actually get support from Utilise, which is the partner that FSB has linked up with. And they can help you understand your own business credit score. They can help you understand the credit score of the businesses that you are doing business with to ensure that your business is protected in a financial way. They can also help you find grants and funding support through an online application process. And it's a very straightforward process. You as a business can complete the application form. The application form goes through to Utilise, and they actually are then your sort of independent financial broker who goes out to over 100 lenders across the UK, but keeps your name anonymous, keeps your business anonymous to ensure that every business gets a fair response in terms of what is and what can be funded in terms of your requirements. So I'm just going to scroll down this page here, and it quickly highlights here how Utilise works with the FSB. So it's part of your FSB membership. And then as you continue scrolling down the page, there's some really helpful frequently asked questions about how do I get funding for my small business? And it has an answer there. What is the best source of funding for small businesses? How can I raise money to start a business in the UK? How do you check your business credit score? And what is a good business credit score? So this is all available on the website at www.fsb.org.uk. But one other page I'm going to signpost you all to, so whether you're a member or not a member, is the one about how I can get funding for my business. So this is a very recent blog on the 28th of December 23. So all I did to find this article was, I'm just going to move my screen myself out of the way here, but just here on the right, you've got a magnifying glass, and I just put in the word funding. And I came up with this article, how can I get funding for my business? So anybody can access this article. And it gave, similar to the points that actually Fiona just raised in her presentation, defining your business needs, choosing the right type of funding, check your business credit score, gather your supporting documents, applying for business funding, and funding made simpler, and then you can find out more. And then what's really useful for the way that this page is structured, on the right-hand side of the page, it automatically highlights other related articles to funding, which you can find here. And then when you click on those articles, they will feed through to further articles of interest to you relating to funding that might be helpful to you as a small business owner. So I think, Gary, that was all I really wanted to share today in terms of signposting. And just one other website that we did put into the chat earlier, in case it's of help to any London business on this call today, and that is the new Grow London Local website, which is in its infancy. It's recently been launched. It's actually a rebrand of the London Growth Hub, but that's another great one-stop shop for sort of support for businesses across the London region. So I'll stop sharing now, and I hope that's been helpful.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, that has been very, very useful and a good overview of a range of support and information you can get from FSB. And as Sarah said, to access the website, you don't actually need to be a member, although there is a members only area for members to access particular information. So I'm just looking at the chat. Somebody is Menaha saying, what is in its infancy? I think that's the Grow London website. That's what Sarah was talking about, because Grow London is a pan-London organisation that is providing business support and works with a number of partners, including local authorities and FSB and a number of other organisations. But that is a London-wide initiative, because there are London-wide initiatives and there are local initiatives like the one that CNT is running here in Bexley. So has anybody else got any questions? Mimi asked a question about, might as well answer this now, let me just go back to it. If I would like to know if I can apply for funding and I will not succeed, can I apply again or not? I think that is a question about whether you can reapply for funding, which is if you don't succeed. That is a good question. It depends on the funders. Some will, for example, if you're applying to the National Lottery and you fail, you can apply again straight away. With others, there may be a qualifying period before you can reapply. Some say 1 year, others might have a longer period. So you need to check with the funder as to whether you're able. It will usually say it in the guidelines. If not, you'll have to contact them directly as to whether you can apply. Manahaz also said, how long can it take to complete a funding application in general? That's kind of a how long is a piece of string question that I think it depends. There are some application forms that are very short. Normally they will be for lower amounts of money. If you're applying for larger or very large amounts of money, I think you can understand that they will want a lot of detail for larger amounts of money. You may be subject to qualifying criteria as well, without going into detail on that, because that's maybe something that David might touch on. But that's usually, if you're applying to a local authority funding, you may be asked to complete what's called a PQQ, a pre-qualifying questionnaire, which is kind of like a mini tender, which will ask a number of basic questions, because that's designed to sift out applicants that may not be eligible at a particular time. That's not to say they're not eligible in future. But that's it in a nutshell. There is more detail to that. Finally, and I'd like to thank him for joining us. I'd like to thank Sarah for joining us at short notice this morning. And please stay around for a few minutes because in case there's any more questions. Our final guest is Councillor David Gardner, who's a councillor in the London Borough of Greenwich, but also has a very significant business background in his former life. And perhaps you can tell us some details about your previous work, David, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about public sector procurement.
Right, thank you very much. And so I've just been to the dentist this morning, so not prepared really. But just to say that I was the KPMG Director of Public Policy, sat on the London Business Board, and very involved in the CBI and so forth. And while I was at KPMG for many years, also did a fair amount of bids myself for public sector contracts. So I'm very familiar with the OJU and procurement process, and now obviously as a Greenwich councillor, see things from the other side, because we have £400 million worth of procurement or equivalent every year. Yeah, so that's what I am. And in Greenwich Council, I've been deputy leader. I've been cabinet member for 8 years, and now chair of the Highways Committee. And I'm a councillor for Greenwich Peninsula, which has the thriving design districts and some of the most exciting, as well as some of the largest private business operating in Greenwich in the O2 itself.
Okay, thank you, David. The majority of businesses that are on this Zoom presentation today, and because there will be a wider audience because it will be put on other platforms, or small businesses. So have you got any advice from both ends, really, both from your previous work and also as a councillor, for small businesses wanting to access local authority or public sector contracts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to get registered, really. So I'm sure all boroughs like Bexley, but Greenwich certainly has a register. And it's very important that you're known. So there are two angles to this, aren't there? Firstly, you'll need to get yourself known, I think, to our business team. That's always very useful. There's a suite of support that's available to businesses that are based in Greenwich, from startup, managing growth, capacity building, support on tendering and bidding for contracts, social enterprise, recruitment, marketing, financial management, and accountancy. But then if you're actually interested in winning contracts with Greenwich, it's important to register as a potential supplier, and there's a process to do that online. And then and obviously to keep in touch with the London tenders document online, and you will see there what contracts are coming up. But I think intelligence is actually also quite important, because you'll want advance warning and notice and so forth, so you know what year or what time of year certain bids and certain contracts are coming up. So so our policy, like many boroughs, has adopted the notion of social value as from the 2012 Social Value Act, and we now factor that in to the assessment of all our bids, and that was very important to demonstrate what sort of economic, social, environmental benefit that they all provide to the borough beyond actually meeting the specifications in the tender. There are 6 stages of procurement that we have, 7 stages, sorry. So stage 1 largely applies to new contracts, is consultation, contract design and packaging, where bidders will often be invited to give their views on how it can be shaped in any innovation and so forth. Secondly, contract documentation, the specification, terms and conditions of contract, and the pricing. Thirdly, will be advertising the contract. I was very involved in the contract for home care, which was quite a large one, so it may not be for people here. But there we had quite a few events to sort of build the market, to encourage more people to apply. That was obviously quite a significant tender. Then stage 4, responding to the advertisements, and that that would be the first response. And stage 5, then the actual bidding process. Stage 6 is a tender evaluation process, which tends to be done by people that are service specialists in that area. Councillors, I hasten to add, are never involved in this. We don't get involved. We get involved obviously in the design of the tender, the objectives and so forth, but we don't get involved in the actual selection. Then stage 7 is a final contract award process, and obviously being a public sector organisation, we have to go through OJU and the equivalent of OJU over certain values, and obviously we've got financial policies in our constitution, which means that we have to, the way controls the way we have to tender and who makes decisions in terms of each procurement. Now, so there's an awful lot. It's all online for people to look at the details. My experience is it tends to be very fair, very open, and so, for example, the highways contract we recently awarded, for years and years and years, it's been going to the same company, Riney's, over many bids, and actually this time it's gone to someone new. I was quite pleased about that. So it is open competition, and it's we're always looking for innovation, always looking for partnership, particularly obviously looking for people that can deliver very effective services. So there's some niche areas. So you talked about funding earlier. There's various arts funding areas as well. and the actual money attached to that. So there's a community arts fund, which is quite significant. The Greenwich, like many, is bidding to be the London Borough of Culture. There's funding around Black History Month as well for organisations promoting Black history and culture. There's arts and cultural strategic funding, and there's funding for Royal Greenwich festivals. So there's a significant amount of funding goes on culture. Sorry, I say significant amount overall, but these are designed for small community arts companies and organisations. So that might be something, if you're in that field, that you'd really want to look at. And it could be sort of digital arts or photography or as well as film and so forth. So it's not just traditional drama and dance and so forth. So yeah, that's where we are. We've got a central procurement team with a new head of procurement, and but most of the work is actually done within our directorates, whereas most councils will do everything centrally in terms of procurement. Ours is more based around the directorates.
Okay, thank you, Debbie, for that good overview. For those 7 stages, because somebody's asked if you can list them right now, but I think that's going to take some time. But it's online. It's on the Greenwich Council website, presumably, is it?
It is, yeah. It's all on.
So yeah. So if anybody's interested in that, just go on greenwich.gov.uk and do a search for business support, and no doubt, or procurement, and no doubt all that information will come up. I mean, if a question I wanted to ask you, David, if an organisation needs to get any advice or support to improve its processes, to get it to a level where it can effectively compete for contracts, have you got any tips on or advice on how organisations might be able to do that?
Yeah. So I think we've got an organisation that we fund called South East Enterprise, and they provide a range of advice and business support to small business. If you're in the voluntary or charity sector, so you're a not-for-profit, then there's the GAVs, the Greenwich Active Voluntary Services, and they provide advice on bidding and training and so forth. And then there's also something that we're very keen on called the Good Work Standard. And that's something we're promoting. I'm not sure if you get advice from that. And then there are specialists. So if you're in food, for example, there's a huge amount that the Greenwich Cooperative Development Agency do in supporting food businesses, which again is largely funded by the council. And trading standards can also help you on that if you're in food and catering area.
Okay, that's fine. Some of those organisations operate in Bexley as well, like South East Enterprise, and GCDA, Greenwich Cooperative Development Agency, actually operates in Bexley as well. Yeah. Martin?
Yeah, that's right. We do work with South East Enterprise on their e-business program, very successful program actually. Across both boroughs, and lots of businesses being supported through that. And yes, we are bringing in. Well, we're doing more with GCDA as well. They're coming in to help us run a new sort of food enterprise and sort of community hub in Erith. So that's happening.
That's good to know. It'd be good to. When that happens, Martin, it'd be good if you could send me some information, because a number of clients on Talking Business might be interested in that. So that's good. Okay, well, thank you for your contribution, David, at short notice. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to thank Sarah King and Fiona Cummings for her presentation as well, and Martin too. So there is, it's just after 12, but we've had a number of questions in the chat. But if anybody wants to ask any of our panelists, apart from Fiona, of course, who's not here, any final questions, please do. While I'm waiting for that, thank you for Rush, who says, thanks to all, very helpful indeed. I'm glad you found this of interest. As you can see, the local authority here in Bexley and elsewhere is trying to do a lot to support small businesses, and they work with other partners like FSB and others to support local businesses. Is there anything you want to add to what's been said today, Martin?
I was just going to pick up that there wasn't a question in the chat from Eno or Eno, which was earlier on, and I think it may have just not been picked up, which is what is the smallest or biggest amount one can request for their project. I've got a feeling that may well have been meant for Fiona because it was at the end of her presentation, but yeah. That might be worth passing back to Fiona. Obviously, from the point of view of the training grant that we currently offer, it's maximum of 500. I don't think there's any particular minimum, but obviously you'd kind of want to keep to £100 or and above, I would imagine.
Yeah, with community and other grants, the range is enormous because obviously it ranges from very small community organisations where you can bid for £100 upwards. And then obviously if you're going after bigger local authority or other contracts, it's a lot more money, but obviously they're subject to procurement processes because these are statutory processes laid down by law, and basically the higher the level of funding you can apply for, the more information and detail you have to supply. I'll give another example. Lottery grants, for example, the smallest one is about 20,000 now, or up to 20,000. You can apply for more than that. And then the largest lottery grants are up to £500,000 still through the Reaching Communities programme. With other smaller grants, it depends what you're applying for. As Martin said, the training grant for Bexley starts at £100. There are and have been contracts which have had much higher value. So it depends on what you're bidding for and what the terms and conditions are of the funder. So they're not necessarily uniform. Some standards are uniform, like local authority procurement, but many other funders have who give away smaller amounts are able to exercise more flexibility. So it does really depend. And then, of course, if you're going after some of the funding that Sarah has mentioned, like loan funding and other related funding, then it's going to be a different set of criteria because you'll have to apply, and your business may be credit checked, which in the early days can be problematic, simply because you haven't got a track record as a new business, or indeed as an individual. If you've never taken any, one of the disadvantages young people face is if they haven't got a credit record, they're not going to get much credit because there's nothing that can be checked against. So that happens as both as individuals and as businesses. So there's not one set of criteria and there's not one set amount of funding that or rules around what you can apply for. They're all different because there are different types of funding programs and there are different levels of access to it. And obviously, the longer you're in business, and especially when you produce sets of accounts, the more of a track record that you've got, and the more funding you could potentially apply for. I'll say that because there are always exceptions to that. And if anybody wants to know more, if you're in Bexley, then please contact us, because you may be eligible to join the Talking Business program, which is a free program where you get up to 6 hours dedicated business support, and then additional help in certain areas like developing a business plan or a funding strategy, or getting your business online, or some other aspects as well. And we're working closely with the Bexley Local Authority and FSB and others on this program. Finally, Martin's mentioned in the chat, we're launching a new startup support project in April as part of the Talking Business program. So I don't know whether you can give any details at this stage, Martin, or obviously this will come soon.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of procuring that. It'll be a third-party organisation delivering that on our behalf, but we're looking at that being a mixture of sort of one-to-one support and sort of group work, so sort of webinars, etc. Both delivered online and in person, and so that's the kind of spec in effect, and looking to give at least 4 hours support to someone who's thinking of starting a business in Bexley. And it can be a resident, it can be somebody who works in the borough or studies in the borough, as long as they're intending to to start the business in the borough.
Okay, more of that, no doubt. And next time you come back, Martin, it may be there may be more information. About that. So thank you very much for your information. We're over time now, so I'd just like to end by thanking you all for attending today. As I say, this will go online, and those of you who've joined us will get a copy of my short presentation afterwards. This will be on other platforms. It will be on our YouTube channel in about 10 days' time. I'd like to end by thanking all my guests who joined us today. Thank you for your input, to which all of you were at very short notice, so I do appreciate that. And thank you for your contributions, which people have really appreciated. I'll leave the last comment to Ruth. Thanks all, much appreciated. So there you go. Yep. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. So thank you very much. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.